A warm welcome. You're tuned into Eye on Africa with me, Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. These are the top stories on the continent tonight. Results trickle in Liberia 2 days after the country voted in presidential elections. Meanwhile, the international observers have given the thumbs up, saying there was no major concerns in the poll. DR Congo's electoral commission says that long-awaited presidential elections won't take place until 2019 as there's still too much work to be done. And Amnesty raises questions over the closed-door trials of Boko Haram suspects in Nigeria. Over 2,000 people are facing trial, but the press and public have been banned. We begin in Liberia, where results are trickling in 2 days after the country voted in much-awaited presidential elections. Now, the two top candidates will advance to a runoff in November in the event that no one wins an outright majority. International observers have given Tuesday's poll the thumb up and say there were no major concerns to report. The vote is meant to bring Liberia's first democratic transfer of power in more than 7 decades. Well, to bring us the very latest, we can cross to our correspondent Leanne Basson-Pierre, who's standing by in Monrovia. Leanne, what are the latest results that you have there, and why are they taking so long to come in?
Well, Rochelle, it has been 48 hours since polls closed here in Liberia, and people were very frustrated. We saw people taking to Twitter yesterday already, congratulating George Weah as being the president of the country. And you have that if the Electoral Commission takes a long time to start giving results in an election. So there was a lot of confusion in terms of who the president actually was, but the Electoral Commission was very clear that they were not going to release any results until 5 o'clock today. That media briefing was meant to take place at 1 o'clock. It only took place at 5 o'clock, and even further delays were then expected around that time as well. We were at the George Weah HQ, where lots of his supporters were waiting with their radios at their ears, radios out of their car boots, and they were very excited for the announcement. They were predicting a first-round victory for their presidential candidate, George Weah, and were even very confused as the Electoral Commission started announcing results, which was about 40 minutes after they had started. It was supposed to come at 5 o'clock. It was closer to 6 o'clock that they started. And it was a very laborious process. They went county by county by county. There were 15 counties, and it was very confusing. And as it stands at the moment, only 30% of the votes have been counted, and the results that they've given so far are based on that 30%. So what it stands at the moment is 43% for George Weah and around 25% for Vice President Joseph Boakai. A runoff, as you mentioned earlier, does look likely at this stage. But with 70% of the votes to still be counted, or to be tallied rather, one never knows.
All right, so as you say there, no certainty over whether there will be a runoff or not. It looks like it. People in Liberia, as you say, Leanne, are anticipating this. They want to know what's going to happen next.
They certainly do want to know what happens next. We have had the supporters out in the streets saying we want a first-round victory. And we've seen in previous elections that the turnout for the second round is not usually as high as for the first round. So a lot of Liberians are saying, we want to get this over and done with. We want to know who our next president is. We want to move the country forward. And a central theme of election campaigning has been change versus continuity. And if it does go to a runoff between Joseph Boakai and George Weah, it definitely would be change versus continuity. Joseph Boakai has famously been saying that he's kind of race car that's been waiting in the garage for 12 years as the vice president, and he is raring to go. He's waiting to come out of that garage and to bring change to this country. But of course, George Weah is appealing to a huge youth population that are looking for jobs, that are looking to see the economy get back on its feet.
OK, Leanne Basson-Pierre speaking to us from Monrovia. Thank you. In other news on the continent, DR Congo's electoral commission has said that long-awaited elections won't take place until 2019 as there's still too much to organise. Well, polls were due this year under a transitional deal that was signed between the government and the opposition in 2016. The delay has raised concerns of more outbreaks of violence in DR Congo. Thomas Nicolin brings us this report from Kinshasa.
The Congolese Electoral Commission has sparked fresh controversy announcing that long-awaited presidential elections won't be held before 2019. The Commission's president says there's still too much to do, but that there could be an alternative solution.
There's not enough money, and insecurity is on the rise. We will need 504 days. Or politicians start listening to us and accept to use electronic voting machines, and then we can move forward faster.
But calls for an electronic vote will do little to appease the main opposition party. They say that since a deal reached in December 2016 was violated, the Electoral Commission had already lost its credibility.
To them, the political deal that was reached with the church doesn't mean anything. They still want to postpone the election until Kabila stays forever in power. To us, the announcement doesn't make any difference. We believe Kabila must step down by the end of the year, whether there's an election or not.
The government says it has no interest in postponing the election. Their spokesman, who claims the Electoral Commission is independent, says opposition leaders fear the poll because they're not prepared for it.
I just came back from a long tour at the heart of the country, and I never saw any sign of the opposition gathering troops. I only see them in Kinshasa's chancelleries or in Western capitals. So we are the ones who would rather have an election.
The complete electoral schedule should be released soon. The international community is ramping up the pressure on the Congolese government amid fears this endless political crisis might lead to more violence in DR Congo.
In a landmark ruling for campaigners, a South African court has found that an anti-apartheid activist who died in police custody 46 years ago did not commit suicide, but was in fact murdered by police officers. 29-year-old Ahmed Timmer was arrested in Johannesburg in October 1971. He died 5 days later. Police had always claimed he'd fallen from a window while in custody. That version of events was dismissed by the judge today. Have a listen.
Timor did not meet his death because he committed suicide. Timor died as a result of having been pushed to fall, an act which was committed by members of the security branch, amounting to murder.
Well, Ahmed Timmer's case is by no means unique in South Africa, where the families of many activists who've died in police custody are still today seeking justice.
40 years ago, Philip Milani heard on the news of the death of a detainee at police headquarters in Johannesburg. Only later he discovered that the man was his 23-year-old son, Matthews. According to police at the time, Matthews had killed himself by jumping from the 10th-story window of this building, but his family never believed it. Now 95, Philip is still searching for the truth.
This is my son. Why is my son dead? Died. What for?
Between 1963 and 1990, 73 people died nationally in police detention. Many deaths occurred in questionable circumstances, with no officer ever held accountable. Families were often told their relatives fell or jumped from buildings or committed suicide in their cells. Lash Mabelane still remembers how his brother Matthews loved music and spending time with friends. He struggles to deal with his loss to this day.
Can you imagine how it feels when a person is pushed from the 10th floor? It's like it's a movie, but it's real.
Human rights organizations have accused the state of dragging its heels in dealing with these cases.
There are many victims and their families in our country who know part of the story and who also are able, because of the Truth Commission, to pinpoint who the perpetrators are. They deserve justice, and our country deserves justice.
The Mabelane family is happy to get the support of the Foundation for Human Rights, who has decided to also champion Matthew's case, but they worry that his elderly father, Philip, will run out of time to see justice being done.
Amnesty International has expressed growing concern about the mass trials of Boko Haram suspects currently underway in Nigeria behind closed doors. Over 2,300 people are facing trials from which both the media and the public have been banned. Anna Cunningham and Moise Gomez report on the trials which have raised questions over Nigeria's justice system.
These campaigners say they will never give up, gathering as they do daily in Nigeria's capital Abuja, calling for justice for Boko Haram victims. They welcome these trials, but also want transparency.
A good beginning that something like that is happening after about 4 years of what happened, especially for those of us that are actually from the Northeast region. But my but is, why is it in Kainji? Why can't it be in an open court?
There are more than 2,000 cases being heard by 4 judges. These are civilian trials in military facilities behind closed doors. Nigeria's legal system is being watched closely.
Nigeria is much more than ready for this type of trial because there is nothing spectacular in it. It's just a matter of following the law, particularly the anti-terrorism provisions, and make sure that the rights of the accused persons are not violated. It's like anybody committing any other crime.
Concerns have been raised by human rights groups such as Amnesty International. It has questioned the transparency of these secret trials, both for the accused and the victims.
Justice is not only being heard about, but it's something people see and people are able to interact with it. And even in terms of the carnage that has happened in these communities, it's important that those who experience it can actually come and face the accusers.
The Nigerian authorities have promised that every defendant will have legal representation, but there will continue to be no media access to the trials.
The Iron Africa team will be back in about 50 minutes' time. Join us then. Up next, more international headlines. Mark Owen is here.
You Are Here, your programme spotlighting French heritage.
Versailles, the Louvre and the Mont Saint-Michel are all well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbors many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24 and discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen, farmers to Michelin star sporting chefs, meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You Are Here on France 24 and France24.com.
Reporters, presented by Mark Owen.
Reporters returns to Mosul 3 months after its liberation by Iraqi forces. 9 months of heavy fighting has left Iraq's second city massively damaged. The old town remains dangerous and out of bounds, but in western Mosul, life is gradually returning to normal, despite the absence of electricity and running water and the presence of mines. Our reporters meet those who have chosen to return home despite the difficulties.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.